Oh, it took me to Edge, right? And then I'm gonna have to share the screen there. Okay.
I would just stick with that
That
one.
one? Okay.
Yeah, just to make sure that they can always see whatever you're.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that why they weren't seeing the link?
Yes.
Do you think it would take the link now or not?
No, I think it is. I think it has to do with this presenter
All
view.
right, so I'll have to get out of that to have that link.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's where the camera is. So I
This is the, yep.
don't turn my back to the camera.
Well, I wouldn't worry about it, honestly. It's worked well just to talk to the group in the room here, yeah. The recording.
Okay, now though, I need the clicker though, so I need to get my flash drive out, correct?
Sure.
So I should save yours.
Yeah, it should stay. It should stay open though.
Let's say open if I saved it. How come it's showing as presenter view and that's not what I'm seeing?
Cause you've got this one shared.
Oh,
So this is the one that's shared. Is that what you want?
I guess. It just, I've never used this clicker forward.
Yeah, yep. Sorry, the button.
Okay, got it.
Okay, that is what you need first though?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I don't know. Are you hosting?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, whenever you're ready, yes.
Are you ready? Sure.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Shani Ramsey. I'm part of the Hatch planning team. And this session will be recorded for future use. And I would love to introduce Kathryn Wolfer to present today.
Okay, hello, good afternoon. I'm excited to share with you a presentation in regards to basically integrating some assessment methods in internship. And I'm just going to explain to you a little bit of background of how we got to the point where we're at now and then improvement. Again, as we've heard throughout the day, it'd be interesting to get some feedback and some advice because again, I'm not an expert. This is what we've done and I would love to hear some input on how to improve. So I was lucky enough a few years ago to be on the College of Business assessment team. I really knew very little about assessment, but I was able to attend the Assessment Institute in Indianapolis in the fall. Conveniently, I became the internship coordinator that December. So while I was there, I had kind of been looking at the internship process, and then I learned this magical device called ePortflio, and it kind of put a light bulb in my head, like, oh my God, this would be a great assessment method for us to use. So some of the outcomes I hope you will learn today is how to integrate ePortfolios into your curriculum, because we in the hospitality program started out with integrating it into internships, but now we're using it more almost as a digital resume for our students so that they can add other components to that. We also have links to software that we get responses from supervisors about evaluation, which is a great tool because it's one of the few times that we can actually speak to our supervisors and find out how our students are doing. You know, Ferris, the bedrock of Ferris is getting people to work. That's what we were built on, experiential learning. So it's nice to get that immediate feedback of how our students are doing in the in industry. Streamlined curriculum development, I'll talk about that because we want to know what our students, what not only what they're doing well, but where they're lacking. So we can kind of collate that information. And then integrate self-evaluation into the internship process, so they can look at themselves and judge how they're doing. So for those of you that are not aware, in the College of Business, the majority of programs in the College of Business require internships, as they do in hospitality. We are part of the sports, entertainment, hospitality, and music department, and those are the programs that make those up. All of those programs do require internships. We require 2 internships, a minimum of 2 internships, 400 hours for each internship. The hope is the first internship is in the industry, and the hope is the second internship is more supervisory in nature. So I'm going to bring up Clifton strengths just a little bit here, because it is basically when I took this class over, I used some of my strengths because it didn't fit the way that I taught. Because these are my strengths: achiever, consistency, learner, harmony, and maximizer. I am very busy, so I try to be really efficient in everything that I do. So in the College of Business as well as hospitality, we're integrating Clifton strengths into our coursework. So that's one of the updates that I want to make to the internship process. Again, that goes back kind of to self-reflection. So this is what the internship looked like when I kind of took over. And I was like, I went into the other coordinator's office. She had stacks of binders behind her desk. And I was like, what is that? And she's like, oh, those are the internship folders. And I was like, and she told me, and I think it was the end of September, I'm still grading them from the summer. And I was like, oh no, that is not going to work for me at all. So I was like, what can I do to streamline? I can't work like that. Like, I can't be in the next semester or, thinking back on what they were doing in the summer. Okay, so this does not go with my maximizer strength at all. Okay, so as I mentioned, I was at the assessment conference, and then I was like, oh my God, I'm going to every session that has the word ePortflio in it. I don't care if it has nothing to do with whatever. If it says ePortflio, I'm going to go to that session. So that was hugely helpful because A, I knew nothing about it. So B, I was like, okay, give me as much information as you can. So that was great. What I kind of learned is, number one was don't tie it to your learning management system because they can't take it with you. So I quickly realized, like, listen, I want the students to leave with it. I don't want to be tied to Blackboard or Canvas, and when they leave, they're like, I can't take this with me. And when I came back to campus, that was reiterated because I think someone in the nursing program, a group used ePortflio through Blackboard, then they switched to Canvas, and that was not a good experience. They would have to translate all their stuff. So that was kind of the first one. I thought, well, what's the easiest way to manage to ensure they take it with them? The second thing I did is the night of the conference, I went up to my room, got on these software websites, and could semi-create a website relatively easily. And I thought, if I can do it, these students should be more savvy than I can. I'm going to let them, figure out. They can figure it out, right? If I could figure it out. So what I did, and luckily, like what I said is, I took this over in the spring semester. I had 8 students on internship. This was my focus group. So I redid it all. And I said, these are your choices for software. I am not providing you any help. That's not my job. That's not my area of expertise. I provided links, YouTube links, if you have questions or how to set up. And I said, I don't care what software you use. So again, I kind of made it easier. I didn't want to say you have to use this because then I felt like it was incumbent on me to be able to help them solve their problem. And again, it was only 8 students. So I kind of thought, okay, if this goes really wrong, it's only 8 students. I'll get a lot of complaints. And then I got 0 complaints. So basically all I did is I took the content from the old internship, and then the outcome, the hard copy, was an ePortflio instead of the binder. So I didn't really change a lot of the information gathering. They had to interview managers. They had to talk to the marketing people. And so the content, I don't think is really important. It was really how it was brought across. Our grading rubric didn't really change, so it was graded on the same thing. The only thing I did take out, the previous requirements were, there was a section in the portfolio about financials. And I realize a lot of companies are not going to want to have their financial information on a student's ePortfolio page out on the internet. So I kind of scrapped that. And a lot of companies didn't want to give it anyway, like we send students to Disney and they're like, well, I can't get this information. I'm like, well, okay, I understand that. So I'm kind of like, that's not really that important anyway. So I removed that segment of the internship guidelines, the content. And so the other thing is, I want the pages to look really cool, right? I mean, that's the whole point of like having them learn how to make really cool websites, and that is really friendly. But I can't grade on that because we're not a design class. So I'm grading on content. Did they answer the question? Yes, I want it to look cool, and that's kind of is an added bonus. And then just so everyone knows, our internships are credit, no credit. So they're not getting the A, B, C, or D. They're basically just getting, you did the work, you did. And I really like ePortfolios from that. So I have a spreadsheet that I created that says, you know, did they talk about marketing? Did they talk about human resources? Did they talk about that? Did they answer these questions? In my spreadsheet, my rubric, I just put an X there. So once they've done it, they get an X, but if they haven't done it, they get an email from me that says, hey, it looks like you didn't cover your self-assessment. You will not receive credit till you update your page. Send me an email when you've got it updated. I can easily just go in there and check it out. So that's the way the grading takes place. So the process, again, integrating the ePortfolio was more of a development tool for discovery, inquiry, reflection, as well as improvement. So allows the students to articulate their strengths to potential employers. So not only do they want it, I want to see that it's going to be outward facing for those students. So the students can use that, and a lot of them do have their link on their resume. So the idea is they're going to hand a prospective student, an employer, a resume. They're going to have their website on there. It's like, you know, it looks cool if it says I worked at the X Games, but you go to my website and you look at all the cool stuff that I actually did there, or things I developed. Promotes continual improvement, and I tell my students that, hey, this document should not end when you graduate, right? When you're graduating, keep adding stuff to it, delete the stuff maybe from your internship or your old material. And then the other thing is curriculum content gaps. So we'll talk about that in a second. So from a student's point of view, this is what they're going to put into it. Their career vision, they can set goals in there. They can integrate in other classes, and we have started doing that in our program, where they'll have different tabs based upon their classes, whether developing business plans or their research projects. More self-reflection, we definitely start that in like our capstone class, where it's like, okay, what did you learn? How is this important to you? How are you going to use this in your future? And then future plans. So one of the things, and I cannot claim ownership to this, is one of the first students put in a personal SWOT analysis, which is strengths, opportunities, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I grabbed onto that. I was like, oh my God, that's a great idea. I added that as part of the requirement. So they have to look at what do they bring to the company, where can they improve, you know, what threats there are to their industry or to them in the industry. One other thing, and this will be like a little self-mockery, that day at that conference, I called my daughter, who at the time was a 6th grade English teacher. I'm like, oh my God, these ePortfolios are really cool, blah, 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 you know, this is so neat. She's like, Mom, we've been doing that for ages. And I was like, oh my God, okay, we're behind the times. So how do you measure the success? So basically, you want the students to present, communicate, right, to future employers. In the ePortfolio, they're communicating with me the answers, right, to their required content. We do ask some self-reflection questions in there. You know, what did you learn? How could you improve? Was there something that you wish you had known? Those type of things. And then I read those, and then I kind of collate the answers. And then technological competency. So we definitely reach out as part of our questions to our supervisors. And I have pictures of those coming up, so you can kind of see how we have that interface with the supervisors. So it shouldn't be a use for self-reflection where they're going to look at their current status versus future. And it's really interesting to see because the students can use the same site for internship 1 and internship 2. And you can see how they, you know, just the internship 2, The presentation is usually a lot better. There's a lot more pictures. It definitely is more elevated. And so you can kind of see that growth right from there. So we get feedback from faculty, mentors, and students. So what we did in the spring semester, we have an internship week. And so we didn't do it this time, but last year what we did is we have a meeting between upperclassmen and underclassmen. And the upperclassmen would sit there and show them their ePortfolios and talk to them about how they developed it, you know, glitches they ran into, some recommendations, a lot of recommendations to start developing your ePortfolio. If you've got downtime between the spring semester and the start of your internship, to create the shell, because then it's easier to have the shell and just add the content as the summer goes on. Steps. So just to, I know everyone does this differently, but in our program, typically they'll schedule a meeting with me. Sometimes they've already got their internship. Sometimes they ask, like, can you guide me? And so once it's been approved, we use software called Formstack. So hopefully you can see. Okay, so this is what our format looks like for when they want to apply for an internship. Again, this is after meeting with me and getting it approved. This is really just getting it through the system to get them enrolled in the class. So normally with me, I'll bring them into like my Canvas shell and show them what the class looks like and kind of talk about the coursework. But for enrollment purposes, our department secretary and I have kind of determined this is the easiest streamlined way to handle this, because I actually need a supervisor evaluation contact. So this is how they basically get that formatting to us. Now, Andrea Ruggles is our all-star department secretary. She has developed these forms. So if you have specific questions, you can ask them to me, but I'm going to refer them to you. She just asked me what did I want in the form, and I told her, and she created this magic. So, so she basically, if it has an asterisk, they have to submit that. So basically, their email address, their content, what semester it's for, the company name, all this information. But it's great. So from that student point of view, that's one-stop shopping. They hit submit, it comes to me. I'm like, yep, and that was Susie Q. I hit approve, I forwarded it to Andrea, and I just said, can you please register them for the class? This maximizer here is done. Everything's accounted for. And the best part, if I lose this email, it doesn't matter. I can log on to Formstack at any time and see all the information, all the cells that are in there. Okay. So that's basically that. That's registration. Okay. So then from a, I can't get it. It's really good up there. I'm trying to get this to move down because it's like right there. Okay. Well, that's the same one. Oh, this is the verification form. Okay. So then what happens is I get this content, and then usually about a week before the internship starts, I send this out to the employer to basically verify, oh, I understand Susie Q is going to be doing a completed internship. And most of this content was actually developed by the College of Business. I basically stole this from the internship coordinator in the College of Business to make sure we checked off all our legal boxes, P's and Q's. The other good thing is this ensures that I have the correct contact information. So normally in the email, I say, you know, in the subject line, I'll put Jane Doe internship verification. You know, greetings. I understand that you're hosting Jane Doe for an internship this summer. I was provided this contact information. If this is not correct, please let me know, or could you direct this to the right person? And then I have all this in a spreadsheet. When I send the emails, the names are all in red. Once I get them back, I highlight it in green to show like, okay, I've received those back. So I know who to keep bothering and pestering to get that information back. Okay. So Formstack has really, I think, been an integral part of this, where it is very quick and easy. And then I usually explain also how the evaluations are going to work. Okay. So if we go from there. So the internship guidelines, as I mentioned, those are adaptable. Okay, so our internship guidelines are going to be different depending upon, you know, what we want. And like I said, I've got property description. So are you at a hotel? Are you at a restaurant? Are you at a resort? How many, you know, what is your customers? Kind of like that. Or marketing. I think we have like 8 different categories. Okay, so I'm just checking to make sure the students are filling those boxes. We do have journals that the students are required to do, and that's more like self-evaluation, where the ePortflio is more like give me the facts. The journals are more like they're prompts every 2 weeks. Previously, they used to do journals every week, which was a lot. I thought, because I want them to focus on this ePortflio, and that was kind of, I keep saying me, but there was a discussion between our department of what we wanted to focus on. I'm like, I'd rather have them focus on the ePortflio and spending more time on that. So every other week we have prompts, and those are determined whether they're on their first or second internship. You know, what struggles did you run into? Did you get any new training, and kind of those types of questions. And then the ePortflio sample. So I do have a sample up here. And we've got a bunch of really good ones. So this was a student that has had a number of different internships. And so the components are pretty much the same. So if you see, like, this is his overview of where he was at, lots of pictures, operations. So these are where a lot of the content is, where they talk about the property, how the organization is, an organizational chart, marketing. So that is basically the content, and that's not going to change. And then this was his second one. He was at Thousand Oaks Country Club, and he was in a supervisor position there. So the interesting parts, I think, of this are the personal assessment. So these are the questions for them to like self-reflect. What did you learn? And again, there's prompts there that they need to answer, and that's really helpful. Okay, and then another huge component is artifacts. I love this idea of the students say they don't learn anything in class, or they're never going to use it in the industry. So we specifically asked, provide 2 artifacts of content from the College of Business, provide 2 artifacts from content and hospitality, provide 2 artifacts of content and non, you know, so let's say a gen ed class, and then give me 2 artifacts of what you learned on site. Okay. So a lot of times they'll just talk about, like, some of them write, you know, a whole couple pages about what they learned and how it related. Jared just did it in a couple little examples, and they all kind of do it a little bit differently. One of the big things we talk about, I think I have a screen capture coming up too of this, was where I added, yeah, his isn't that visual, so I'll show you a different one. The SWOT analysis. Okay, so right, so these are the personal assessment as well as the artifacts. Again, like I said, from the coursework, College of Business coursework. And again, they're not all going to be the same, because some students, you know, Jared had a great experience. He was at Vanderbilt, and the whole kitchen staff quit except for him and another chef. So they had to revamp the whole menu and reprice everything out. So he spent a lot of time pricing out, like going onto the Gordon Food Service website and figuring that out. So of course his artifact is going to be like, well, purchasing, because you already showed me how to use the GFS website, and then cost control, because that's what I learned to do in the class. So the hope is, you know, in the next internship, they're picking and choosing other content that they use. So I think I already showed you his example. So this is a definition of, this is what I found online, and that's from the website I pulled it off of. Again, I stole this. This was a student had done this for one of their first ePortfolios, and I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I need. So it's like, what professional qualifications do you bring to the table? And that's great for our students, because our students get certifications. They're ServSafe certified. They get certifications from American Hotel Lodging Association. So it's easier for them to see that. Then their weaknesses, what are their weaknesses? And it's great to read some of those. And this was one of the ways that we actually drive our curriculum. one of the students, I'll never forget, she was working at Fifth Third Ballpark, and I'm like, oh, how's it going? You know, having a chit chat with her. And I was like, well, what's the hardest part of the job? She's like, making phone calls to people I don't know. And I was like, are you kidding me? So we had a discussion of like, okay, maybe we need, in part of our customer service class, maybe that would be a good exercise is to cold call people. If that's something that they really don't feel comfortable doing, how do we integrate that into our program? And then opportunities and threats, those are pretty self-explanatory. So, but what I typically do then is I'll grab some of the terms. So these are some students. These are their SWOT analysis, okay? Strengths, she's a graduate, good interpersonal, good communication, good motivation. Overthinker, organizational skills, procrastination, poor email communication. So it is funny that some of it themselves. So usually I've got to go say like, okay, the first two were really good, applicable to you, but the other two are supposed to apply to you also. And then this was another student. So the strengths, again, serve safe, allergen certified, strong work ethic. We do a lot of things in the industry. So our students really do have a lot of customer service skills. They're really confident there. Public speaking, confrontation, phone skills. So I put that one in there because that one I thought was funny. And so the other thing we did, confrontation. In my in the capstone class, we started adding in a coursework called crucial conversations. Like, how do you have those crucial conversations? So again, we're using this to kind of drive our curriculum. Again, other opportunities and threats, shy, easily flustered. So I included screen captures of these because it's not easy to go into Formstack and see all the sheets. But again, this is the questions that we're asking the supervisor. So again, these can be easily adapted. You know, someone in engineering technology, we want different questions than what we're asking. So this is basically, you know, give me the information, who's evaluating, and then we've got personal characteristics, like what's important to us. We're asking about the maturity, judgment, enthusiasm, dependability, initiative, perseverance, self-confidence, and then comments. And then please rate the following: attitude toward work, supervisor's willingness to learn, ability to think independently, and then hopefully the hope is they're growing in all these right between their first and second internship. And then these are just kind of some work performance, quality of work, quantity of volume, effective use of time, organization, and then just basic personal appearance, neatness, appropriate attire. But you'd be surprised, that actually could be a problem sometimes. And then we ask these questions to kind of compare them to other employees and interns. And again, it was just to give us kind of a frame of reference of where they stood against other employees, customer service better than or worse than business. And again, we understand some students on their first internship, there might not be getting a lot of business knowledge just by the nature of the position they've been hired into. Okay, so what we did is, one of the questions, I don't know where it exactly is, but it's on there. Take my word for it. One of the questions is, what areas were for improvement for our students? So I think we make them answer. So it's one of those that they have to fill in the text. And so this was a little bit hard because we didn't want to give them set answers like terms. We wanted them to put their own terms in there. So then I kind of had to group the terms if they were, you know, kind of related. So I did kind of a little cloud, a word cloud here. If the words are bigger, these were what was more common and areas for improvement. So accounting, assertiveness, communication, confidence, business operations, initiative. And then as the words get smaller, those were less commonly given as room for improvement. I've had this discussion a lot, and I always wonder, like, how do you give your students confidence? Or, and you know, I sound like a parent, but whenever they say they need to be more confident, I always say, maybe they need to be trained a little bit better. I don't ever say that, but that's kind of in the back of my head, because I always feel like the students, if they're not trained, they're afraid to make a mistake. And if they were trained better, maybe they'd have a little bit better, you know, better idea. Okay, This was one of my favorite, of course, proud mom, proud parent moment. Most significant contribution to the team. I loved seeing these. These are all like, yes, these are our students. We know our students because we work with them. We do events with them. Teamwork, positive attitude, business knowledge, which is funny because you notice business operations was something they needed to work on, but business knowledge apparently is one of their strengths. So again, it's dependent upon the student that they're going to have. So a couple ones, like we obviously we live this team player in our industry, positive energy, leadership, personality, positive attitude. So many times I would get, they're willing to do whatever I ask. And I'm like, that's exactly what I want to hear as a faculty member. So these are hugely positive. And so I think now that I'm going back, I kind of think I skipped, but after that first time I did this, I did have a focus group with those 8 students after I integrated the ePortflio and I brought them in. I think I fed them pizza. And I was like, okay, what did you guys think? Like this was just a throw it against the wall and see what it kind of sticks moment. And I asked them, was the software hard to figure out? What did you think? I really got no complaints. So that's when I sat down with the program coordinator and I was like, okay, we're moving forward. Like we're just gonna go with this and see how it works. And I have to say, I usually ask after the first internship, like, what did you think of it? I will say the other thing I do is in probably the end of April, we do have a scheduled Zoom meeting with all the students for prior to internship before they leave. So I used to do it in person, but now it's through Zoom. And so we go through, the old ePortfolios, the requirements. I bring up, a lot of the students have allowed me to share their ePortfolio. So when they're in the Canvas shell, they have examples of good ePortfolios. They have examples of what artifacts are. That's a hard one because the students are not really clear on that. So these were the questions. There's always room for growth. So these are the actual questions. 1 was most need improvement. 5 was least need improvement. So these are just some examples. Hope he returns next season. Like that's what we'd like to see. Customer service. Our students really do provide some exemplary customer service. So this data was from 54 supervisor responses. 49 results were eligible for analysis because they didn't always necessarily answer all the questions. So the average results of the good customer service down to the accounting. But again, especially with the first internship, we're not really expecting a lot of our students to have, they might not even have experience doing any accounting in their internship. So we can understand why that's lower, kind of on the scale. So revisions, try to make the same questions for the students as well as the supervisor. So then they're easily better to compare a little bit easier. Determine if there's a disconnect between the supervisor's perception and the student's perception of their performance. So what I did do is I explained kind of the SWOT analysis a little bit better because the first time I did it, I was getting the business's SWOT analysis, even though it says self on there, they were not making the connection. So I needed to explain that that data a little bit more. And so this is where we kind of look at the data and, have the discussion of okay, where are we lacking? Do we need to add something in the curriculum? If we are, what class do we put that into? And then these are basically what pleased you the most about the trainee's performance? What's the student's most significant contribution? And again, what Andrea has done, if they've got asterisks on them, they have to answer those questions, so they can't just skip through there and that, because we want the feedback. So it's one of the few times we can actually get industry feedback about what our students are doing. Again, they only do this twice a semester. We send one midway through the semester. So in the summer, I send in a link with a password and say, please respond. And I usually say it takes between 5 and 8 minutes. When I get that information back, I just forward that right on to the student. And 99% of the time, it's great. Sometimes it'll be like, oh, looks like you called in sick a few times. Might not, keep an eye on that or something. And then the last question is, did they complete their hours on the second internship? So instead of, previously they'd have to have a piece of letterhead signed from a supervisor saying they completed it. Again, we're trying to streamline this as much as possible through our industry. Our industry's shorthanded already. Like, I'm trying to make this a minimal intrusion on the businesses. So some sort of revisions or things I would like to implement is I did talk to our prior professional tennis management person. I talked to the PGM group, but because of the PGA qualifications, this wasn't really a great fit, as well as the music industry management program coordinator. I would think it'd be really cool to kind of see this integrated throughout the university. Internships throughout campus are very different. The number of hours are very different. The output, I think, is very different. But ePortfolios, I think, are just like, I don't want to say a magic solution, but it really is, they're pretty easy. And I didn't even mention, one of the added bonuses, your students now know how to develop a web page. Like, for our students that sometimes work in small businesses, there was this past summer, a woman, she got put in charge of doing all the marketing, all the social media pages, had to develop a page. She's like, hey, I already did that. I already know how to do that. So, like I said, the students will present theirs at internship week. And I didn't show you, I can jump out of here real quick. I got out of it really quickly, but if you look at Jared's, if you go all the way up to the top, he actually has a business plan. And I believe this is from a different one of our courses. So he, like Professor Keogh was saying, he's integrated, like this is his business plan for his company that he wants to open. He's got a concept, he's got his menu. So, how great is that to go in there when he wants to get hired for a position? That he's like, look at what I've already done. So just kind of along the same lines, continuous improvement, I allowed the students to use Google Sites, which is not really a savvy website. So part of me thinks like, should we only allow them to use something that really looks more professional? I don't really know the answer to that. The other one that I know in talking to a student is she has used Canva as a website page development. So I kind of want to look at that before the summer to see if I want to add that as an option. And then what is the best way to assess the portfolio? I don't really know. Like I said, I just have my content and I just kind of check once they've covered that in the portfolio, but it helps me because in the summer we might have 50 or 60 students. So when I send the email saying like, you're missing this, and then 2 weeks later, again, I'm like, okay, I updated. I'm always like, what were they missing? And so I can pull up the spreadsheet. How to ensure continuous improvement? I don't really know. Like, I feel like it's a constant evolving. And like I said, I would like to see some cohesion or consistency throughout the university. Because I don't think ePortfolios are used a ton, because I think when I got on this kick, I contacted the faculty center. I was all like, yeah, this is really cool. Who else is doing this? And they didn't really have a ton of information. So I just think it's a nice tool. It's streamlined, it's easy to manage, and the students are kind of learning on their own. I thought I had my contact information on the last page, but apparently I did not. So we'll see. I don't have any questions, but I talked really quickly. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, I have one.
Sure.
You mentioned that the midway through, there's an evaluation that's done, and then at the end on the student.
Correct.
But does the student have an opportunity to evaluate the employer?
Not in like a format like that. That's what I'm getting in their journals.
Okay.
So I'm asking those journal questions.
Mhm.
I ask specific questions about like, how has your training been like? So if there's a problem, and that did happen,
Yeah.
right when Katie and I, like, she's laughing because we got these frantic phone calls at like 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, there were definite problems. But
Okay.
so that's where the journal is, that ongoing content with the students. And so I didn't talk a ton about other things, but our theory on the internship is to prepare them for industry.
Mhm.
So what that means to us is they're also turning in a resume. I've got recordings about resume improvements. They watch videos from the big interview here on campus. They have to improve their resume and submit that. They have to show me their LinkedIn page. They have to show me their handshake page. So again, all these are an aside of what else they're also doing. This was just like the ePortflio kind of discussion, as kind of an assessment form. But yeah, so that's my take on it. I mean, I'm in industry, so that's my thing is like everything that they're doing should be related to them getting employment, right? That's kind of our focus. And this also helps in that regard too. It's not like it's a binder that is stuck in my office that I throw away after they've turned it all in. So.
But do you ever get pushback from the evaluator as far as how much paperwork they have to do?
No.
Or portfolio work?
No, because most of the work is on the student.
Yeah.
The student has to get all that content. They have to do,
Right, so
right, twice. They'll get 4 emails from me.
okay.
One, is this the right, whatever. I get a verification form. I send an email for the mid-semester evaluation. I mean, sometimes I got to email them 3 or 4 times. Once I had got one evaluation the whole summer for one student. I was like, well, I'm not holding them accountable because I'm not getting this. And then usually 2 weeks before the end of the semester, I send another reminder. Here's a link. Can you please take care of this at your earliest convenience? You know, why it's important. We need the feedback from the students. Yeah, I really don't. And the other thing is we have relationships in the industry, and I know if they want to keep getting our students,
Which they do.
then, you know, and I usually, if let's say you came to me and you were going to someplace I've never heard of, I usually explain to them, this is all the supervisor has to do. There's 4 emails. And then as part of our guidelines, big document, there's a segment in there of what's expected from a supervisor. So I usually tell the student, if your supervisor has questions, take a screen capture, show them this document. If they're worried about this is going to take up too much time and energy, assure them that it's not, here's the blurb, and then they'll get 4 emails from me, and then that's it. Because again, I mean, they're working for a living, right? We don't want to be infringing on their life, and it's one more thing that they have to do.
And this is pretty different than what the College of Business is doing in other places, isn't it? I mean, no one else is.
I don't know. I mean, I
Sure,
talked
no.
to, right.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's why after watching the opening session this morning, I kind of thought this would be kind of a cool when
Yeah.
Dan was talking about like, oh, you know, coming in and doing this halftime, like, I like this, I think would be very cool. Because there are universities that are big ePortfolio universities, like you don't, you know, that's part of your graduation. They look at your ePortfolio and they like everything you've learned is in there. So they have people that come
Do you
in.
have one that's done?
Pardon me?
Do you have one that is easy to look at? I don't know if it's all confidential or.
Jared's was the one that I showed you. So Jared, so this is just,
That's his.
this is his personal, we call it either your personalized web page. Obviously he's got his personal stuff in there. Some of them will have their like personal statement on there. It's so different. And so he talks about himself and then his internship. So here was one, and here's his like personal assessment. I've learned a great deal about myself. You know, I feel as my career goals have been reinforced through my internship. So these are all responses to prompts that I've asked. Okay. And then again, here are his artifacts.
Okay.
And then his SWOT analysis, which he didn't, a lot of them do them as like a, you know, his was more a document. So his was a little bit harder to read. I think that's why I didn't pull it up. A lot of people do like a little, you know, square. Actually, what I do to collate that is as I'm grading it, I just screen capture all those and I put them in a folder. And at the end of the semester, then I'll kind of just go back in and see if there's like a pattern of any of the categories, put the words in a spreadsheet, and then kind of create a word cloud from the spreadsheet. Yes.
One thing I will tell you is if you're looking at this and it feels a little daunting, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to Kathy. Maximizer is like an understatement. This woman is probably the most efficient and productive person I've ever had in my life. And the piece that we haven't had an opportunity to tap into yet, but I haven't even sat down and talked extensively with Kathy about, but we have referenced and recognized is the massive amount of data that we can pull from this when we can sit down and start really gleaning it. Now, she started, when she did those word pieces, that was just something we wanted something really visual for our advisory board, which was what prompted it. But even as we're sitting here, I completely forgot that we referenced the wages. In one of the questions, I just met for the first time with the general manager and his team from Sundara, which is a luxury property in Wisconsin. I don't even know how they found us. But they reached out, got in contact with us. And this is what I will tell you about the reaction of industry. When we went into, they were like, what are the requirements? And, we went through the requirements of the company and they were like, oh, okay, that's all. That's amazing. They said, well, what about for the student? And then I showed them an example portfolio and I went through a little bit of the information, because usually that's where we transition it. And I say, okay, here's Kathryn, she'll tell you about that. But they were thrilled. They said, this is exactly the kind of rigor we want out of the student, because then we know they're serious. They're not here just to get hours and punch a clock and go home. They're looking for real deep-seated professional development. And that's kind of what we found with this, is that it's enhancing not only the educational content, but the perception of the caliber of the student we're sending. Is because when the students are going in and asking for the interviews, and they're showing, and a lot of them are showing their employers best, they're working with them to help figure out how to enhance it. So it's doing a lot for the perception of caliber of our students.
Kathryn, do you have any sense of when a student chooses a platform for their portfolio? Do you, like, how many opt for the paid version or like above and beyond?
So it's funny because a few weeks ago we had our internship week and we did a Zoom call with upperclassmen. So I kind of handpicked people with good ePortfolios with our underclassmen. And that was one of the discussions of what software to use. And I can't remember if it's Wix. I think it's Wix is very hard to use on campus.
Yes.
So there's some firewall issue that I
Yeah.
can't even go on my computer on campus and try to grade them. I have to
One or
grade
two of them
from-
were blacklisted. We found this out with our doctoral students as well.
Yeah.
Because they have a similar requirement, but yeah, like it was a longer story, but Wix in particular, I think, was blacklisted at some point, along with one other.
So part of the reason why, and another reason why I'm not, and I think but we have this discussion on program, I don't think I will make them be on a platform, because we have some students that already have it. So like we've had some marketing students, like I'm thinking about Emma,
Yes.
when I had, like when I brought it up, she's like, oh yeah, I already got a page. And I was like, well, okay then, like just add on then, right? So I'm not gonna go back and say like, okay, you have to take all this great content and shift it. If you already know all this and you're comfortable with that content, then I'm just looking at the content and I want them to keep using it. I guess, and so that was another reason why if I let them pick, I feel like they're gonna pick whatever they're comfortable with, more apt for them to continue on with that format.
And programmatically, we do a lot of work with professional branding, particularly with my event management students. They actually have a 2-semester comprehensive event personal branding project they have to do. And it all ties into this. It's important that the structure is there that allows us to be continuous and to provide improvement and to have ways to assess effectively. But it's just really critical, particularly for today's student, that they can express who they are. And so whether that's, in Jersey, I love that his SWOT was different. He's one of the few that actually wanted to verbalize it. Very few students, they want to write less,
Right.
as possible. But he is one of our strong communicators. So to me, as an employer looking at that, I would be like, wow, he did something, he wrote it all out. Like that would indicate a skill set to me. So keeping some of that flexibility in both platform and design has been something that as a team cohesively, we really wanted to maintain for them.
That's really cool. I like the freedom of choice. That's where.
I know, but I think the Google sites and like, I was letting them use Prezi too, and I might get rid of that one too, because that really doesn't look, I mean, it's good for presentation software, but not like for a true web page design. So I'm thinking about getting rid of that. And we really have been pushing for our strengths in our other classes. And I think I'm going to add something to the self-assessment, like, how some question or some couple questions related to their strengths, because for most of our classes now, we integrate some strengths component or exercise into it. And it really has been very helpful, I think, to our students to see, like, looking at their career and what they bring to a business. So anyway, I just have to figure out if I'm going to do that for this summer, but I think that's really it. I don't see any questions from.
No questions in the chat or anything.
No, okay. Okay, lots of things to think about. that is really all I have. If you do have further questions, I feel like I'm on a mission to spread the ePortflio word. Yeah, I just think it's cool. It's cool and very streamlined and, again, the back end is they learn how to make a web page and that really wasn't kind of the purpose designed at first, but then, and it's easy to manage, right? I'm not seeing the binders in my office, so really.
And I'll spring this on Kathy in front of all of you so that she doesn't throw something at me. No, I wanted to look down the road a little bit at integrating video.
Oh, right.
And because one of the things is that ability to self-present is one of our students' biggest weaknesses. And so when they talk about that concept of overthinking, they're not overthinking. That's not what they're doing. It's a lack of confidence. It's a lack of ability to make swift decisions. And some of that comes with presentation, talking about yourself, recognizing, being able to articulate what you're good at. So I would love to see a piece in here.
So that would be, yeah, we could
record
easily
video.
add in, have a video of you
Yes.
explaining your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats instead of having it written and then have a little, or something related to biggest lesson they learned at the job, whatever, component. That's next step.
Yep.
All right.
So you were already there, and this is the funniest thing about her. Sometimes I say these ideas, and she's like, oh yeah, I'm already on the way.
Well, I think I had thought about it, but there's so much when we first did it that I was like, okay, this is gonna be the base form and then we can add on to it. Oh, thank you, Jim. Well, yeah, I should thank Jim and the College of Business. That's how I got to go to the assessment conference. So that just started this whole ball rolling, so. All right. All right, shall I end this, Dan, or what do you, should I just?
Yeah, just stop sharing if
Leave?
you want, or we can take care of it.
I don't think I am sharing anymore. I think we're good.
You are not, yeah,
Okay.
that's fine, that's fine.
Okay, very
Perfect.
good. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Coming.
I was gonna say, where's that room? Just drink some, that's nice.
It's a tool.
Here.
It's not in this room.
I thought
That's the only thing I know.
it's 209 and 213. So it must be 209. Okay, I was gonna say, wait a minute. 209 and 213.
Yeah, this is 213.
Okay, so it's gotta be 209 now. Okay,
Yeah,
that'd
that
be great.
schedule got,
Thank
the
All right,
schedule's
thank
really
you.
busy.
you. Thanks, Jerry. Great.